It was a regular morning, and I was sorting my books out in my locker when excited screams and cheers distracted me. Huh? It was way too early for this level of noise. A group of girls was lingering around the bulletin board. I walked over to take a look. Turns out, it was just the latest poster of Hillary, the prettiest girl in school, for her campaign of becoming prom queen. Well, yeah, typical reaction, since Hillary alone is too perfect already. All day, I found myself thinking about the Queen Hillary poster. Oh, I wish I could be as beautiful as she is. I mean, I'm not that ugly, but damn sure I'm not beautiful like her. OMG, look at me. My cheekbones aren't defined enough. My lips aren't pumped enough. My hair is too frizzy. And I literally have to jump on the spot to get myself into my favorite pair of jeans. Let's face it, I was plain and ordinary, while Hillary, she was oh so beautiful. Mom called me down for dinner, so I sat there glumly twirling my fork around my plate. Mom must have noticed something was up, as frowning she asked me, "Sonia, what's wrong? You've barely touched your dinner." "I'm not hungry," I sighed out. "Anyways, I'm big enough already, and ugly enough." "Sweetie, don't be silly. You look lovely." Yeah, right. Mom was only saying that because she felt like she had to. I thanked her for dinner, then went back to my room and scrolled through Hillary's profile. There wasn't one bad picture of her. Not one! She was so flawless, while I was, well, full of flaws. The next day, I was hanging out on the school field with my best friend Sydney and my boyfriend Lucas when Hillary passed by in a stunning dress. Jeez, look how gorgeous she was. Earth to Sonia. Sydney threw a potato chip at me. I turned and gave her a "what was that for" look. She rolled her eyes and continued, "Stop staring at little Miss Popular and pay attention to us. You know, your actual friends. Hello?" "Sorry," I sighed. "It's just that she looks so pretty in that dress. It's not fair. She doesn't even have to try. Well, on me, it'd look like I was wearing a garbage bag." "Stop comparing yourself to her. It's dumb."
"Yeah, Hillary's Hillary. You are you. And you have your own beauty."
I shook my head. Yeah, right. I didn't have any beauty. Instead, I was ordinary, while Hillary was extraordinary. Chemistry was the only class I shared with Hillary, and for that entire 45 minutes, I just couldn't stop staring over at her, transfixed. As the teacher droned on about the periodic table, I daydreamed about how amazing it would be to have hair as glossy, skin as clear as hers. I caught her staring back at me a couple of times, and one time she mouthed, "What?" then rolled her eyes and annoyedly turned away. But still, I couldn't take my eyes off of her. After the lesson, I followed her to her next class, even though it was in a different direction to where I needed to be. I watched on with envy as her boyfriend, Ethan, the captain of the basketball team, looked at her adoringly, and how her pretty friends flocked around her. It must be so awesome to be that perfect. My Hillary obsession continued at home. Each evening, I scrolled through her profile and saved any new pics she'd posted. Then I'd just lay in bed staring at her perfect features and comparing them to my not-so-perfect ones. I even printed out my fave pics of her and framed them on my desk. Then one day, my worst nightmare came true. I was on my way to meet Lucas when I saw him standing in the hallway and talking to Hillary. That's odd. A popular girl like Hillary would never enjoy talking to a normie like him. Oh man, look how Lucas keeps laughing, then giggling. What if Hillary likes him? That kind of girl definitely gets whatever she wants easily. I couldn't watch any more of this, so I sent Sydney an emergency message and rushed off to the bathroom. She found me crying in the cubicle and asked me what was wrong. I told her what had happened and she frowned. "Are you insane? Lucas was probably just being polite to her." "Geez, he's with you for a reason, so Get over this Hillary fixation. It's weird. Why did Sydney have to be so rude? I wanted her support, not her backlash. So I didn't meet up with her after school as planned. Instead, I went straight home and looked through my Hillary photos. I cut out sections of her lips, nose, hair, and stuck them on top of a photo of me. Looking down at it, well, wow, I looked so much better. It was then that I decided I would have a perfect face like her. So clutching the improved photo, I hurried down to my mom and waved it in her face. Look how perfect I'd be if I changed a few things. Please will you lend me the money to pay for surgery? Please? Mom looked horrified.
Sonia, you're only 17, and you're already beautiful. You don't need to put yourself through all this pain and risks to look like someone else.
I tried explaining to her that I didn't want to continue my life looking as plain and boring as I did, but she didn't listen at first. It took me a lot of time to talk her through, and let's face it, she also has had a nose job before. So what's the big deal about me getting mine fixed too, along with a few more touch-ups? That summer, I lied to Sydney and Lucas that I was spending the whole holiday with my dad and stepmom. I showed the surgeon a photo of Hillary as an example of the results I wanted. So he narrowed my nose, inserted cheek implants to give me a more defined look, and injected my lips with filler. I woke up after surgery in agony. Oh dear God, it hurts! I couldn't talk, and even crying was painful. Worse still, with all the bandages, I resembled an Egyptian mummy. Then, when the bandages were removed, my face was all swollen and puffy, and I had to do these massages to improve my facial muscles again. Pain is beauty, and beauty is pain, isn't it? Mom wasn't exactly impressed with what I did, as I didn't really tell her I would change my entire face. Still, she spent the summer looking after me, even though I did have to put up with her whining and sometimes even tears. Once healed, all that was left to do was have my hair colored and cut like Hillary's, and change my style to match hers. With my new look complete, I looked at the mirror and smiled. Finally, I was beautiful. I returned to school excited for everyone to see my new look, but as I walked through the hallway, everyone stared and gossiped about me. People I didn't know surrounded me and bombarded me with questions such as, which parts did you fix? How much? And did it hurt? Nobody actually complimented me or anything. Then, as I was sorting out my locker, I heard a cough. I looked up to see Sydney standing there with her arms folded. So, was it worth it? I wasn't in the mood for this, so I replied, You can't say anything nice, can you? This is who I am now. I'm being my true self, and I'm happy. No, this is you trying to be someone you're not. I slammed my locker shut and stormed off. What kind of person doesn't support her own best friend? My day went from bad to worse when I met Lucas at lunch. He glared at me, then angrily said,
Sonia, why? There was nothing wrong with you before, but now you're just a clone of someone else.
He went to leave, but I held his arm. Please, I did this because I want to be more beautiful. For you. I did this for you. Lucas shook his head, then gave a thoughtful sigh. He didn't try to leave after that, but he kept giving me this pitying look. Then, when I was walking to class, a guy ran up behind me and put his arm around my waist.
Hi there, my baby.
Startled, I immediately pushed him away. Oh, it was Ethan, Hillary's boyfriend.
What's wrong? But, wait, why does your face look so weird?
I pushed him off me and ran away. OMG. That was horrifying. My heart was still pumping. From then on, people continued to mistake me for Hillary. Then whenever Sydney sat with me, they gossiped about how tragic it was that she was trying to be a cool kid. It made her feel uncomfortable, so she stopped hanging out with me at school. I had to sit by myself and felt so lonely. Then there was Lucas. Whenever I tried so much as hug him, he flinched. Then he admitted that He found my new look strange and intimidating. Life carried on, and prom grew closer. I noticed one of the Queen Hillary posters had been ripped off, and in its place was another poster of a girl named Kim. Geez, this prom queen campaign seems very stressful. Then, as I stepped outside, I heard someone shout, "Now!" Then the next thing I knew, stuff was thrown at me. In just a blink, I was covered in tomatoes and eggs. Yuck! Then a group of girls smirking stepped out and one said, "You should just give up trying to be prom queen before it's too late." I blurted out while taking pieces of eggshell off of my hair, "What? Why attack me?" "Oh wait! Girls, it's the Plastic Hillary wannabe. Well, you still deserve this. Have fun being a failed version of Hillary." They laughed as they left, leaving me standing there feeling worse than ever. I went to the bathroom to clean myself up and walked in on Hillary applying her makeup in the mirror. Whoa, her face actually wasn't so perfect with all the makeup on. "Oh wow, it's you." She glanced at me. "You know, everyone is talking about you even more than me," she said, while covering her eyelid with tons of eyeshadows. "I mean, I'm kind of flattered, but trust me, you look ridiculous. You're like the Walmart version of me. I feel sorry for Lucas for having a super insecure girlfriend like you." Then she flicked her hair and left. I looked at myself in the mirror, tears streaming down my face. So Hillary was just a mean girl who faked her butt off to build a friendly image and covered her mediocre face with a lot of makeup. She wasn't perfect, just like me. From then on, I desperately longed to look like myself again. I begged Mom to lend me the money to fix my face, but she refused. "No more. Once is enough. Isn't this all you wanted?" Great. Now I was going to be stuck looking like this forever. Until one night, my cheeks started aching. Soon, I couldn't so much as twitch my face without being in serious pain. Mom found me clutching my face in agony and drove me to the hospital. The doctor told me my implants had leaked and I needed emergency surgery to remove them. This happened a month ago. Now, when I look in the mirror, luckily, I don't see Hillary anymore. Instead, I see me, but in a quite different look. I've well and truly learned my lesson, and Sydney and Lucas have been there to help me through everything. Now I know that I should have learned how to love myself instead of comparing myself to someone else. I am who I am. And you know what? I now realize that I'm okay with that.
Hi guys, I'm Chrissy, and my high school life took a drastic turn thanks to my crazy, overprotective mom. You see, my parents divorced when I was a little kid. I stayed with my mom, but she worked for the criminal investigation department, which meant she was super busy, so the house chores remained undone, and we lived off takeaways. Trust me, having pizza and egg fried rice every night isn't as good as it sounds. My grandparents could see that my mom was struggling to juggle her work and home life commitments, so I went to stay with them. I didn't mind this, as Mom always visited me on weekends. Besides, Grandma's meals are delicious. But then, Mom switched departments. She went from chasing criminals to handling paperwork at the station. Due to these changes in circumstances, she had far more time on her hands, so I moved back in with her. It's only by living with her that I realized just how different she is to me. Talk about my opposite, as she's strong, fierce, and impulsive. Basically, she's like a man, while I'm a sweet girly girl who loves wearing pretty clothes and watching cute movies. You can imagine my horror when I invited my bestie, Sharon, over, and Mom was walking around the house in a skull print tank top, ripped jeans, and biker boots. She looked like she was going on a bike rally. Yeah, this was just her usual style, but I was expecting she would at least act normal for once when we had a guest around. It was so cringe. She was almost 40, not 15. Then, on my first day of high school, Mom insisted she take me there and pick me up, as she was worried there might be troublemakers on the bus. Yep, I know, this was ridiculous. I mean, how delicate does she think I am? but I didn't want to upset her, so I reluctantly agreed. School's out, and I was chatting with my friends while waiting for my mom to show up when we suddenly heard the sound of a motorbike engine coming toward the school. Me and my friends got excited and whistled as we thought a cute guy was passing by. But then they stopped near us and took off their helmet. I literally wanted to faint. It was my beloved mother. Oh, sweet Jesus! What on earth was she doing? My mom shouted with joy. "Hey, Chrissy, get on!" Then she held a spare helmet out to me. I swear it was like the whole school was outside watching us. How embarrassing! When we arrived home, I asked her where the bike had come from. She replied, "What? Oh, you mean Eleanor? I just bought her last week. The weather is so nice today, so I thought I would bring her along." Yes, you heard her right. My mom named the bike after Eleanor Roosevelt. Unbelievable! The embarrassment didn't end there. Oh no. One day, my teacher informed us that tomorrow after school was a parent-teacher conference. I couldn't have Mom turning up in a teenage rebel outfit, so I searched her closet for something mom-like. Nope. All my mom owned were t-shirts, ripped shorts, and crop tops. Ugh! So I went online and found this beautiful blue dress, then I told her to buy it. The next day after school, I waited for Mom in my form room. All the parents were already there, only my mom was missing. I was about to call her when suddenly somebody walked into the room. Oh my God! Someone, please knock me out right now. It was my mom, and you wouldn't believe what she was wearing. No, it wasn't the blue dress. Instead, it was this super skinny black leather dress, black sunglasses, 10-inch high heels, and a black choker necklace. She looked like she belonged in a vampire movie. Everyone was gawping at her. I think some of the dads were even drooling a bit. When I confronted her about it, she just shrugged and said, "Sweetie, this dress is much more my style than that mumsy blue one." Now this was officially my #1 most embarrassing moment ever. Thanks, Mom. Why couldn't she be like me? I mean, I was starting to think that I was the adult here, not her. The embarrassment didn't end there. Instead, she took it to a whole new level. My school was planning a camping trip, and I was so excited about it. Mom wanted to come along and supervise, but I firmly said no. She started saying, "But honey, you don't know how dangerous the woods are. What if you got bitten by a snake? Do you know how to handle that?" "I don't think so." What? She was just being ridiculous again. We argued for a while, but in the end, she agreed to let me go without her. The trip was so much fun, and some cute boys asked Sharon and me if we wanted to go for a swim in the lake. Of course, we said yes. I mean, look at them. They were so cute. Suddenly, I heard screaming. It was Sharon. She said someone was hiding in the bushes and watching us. That was so creepy. The cute boys said they'd go and check it out, but then this person jumped out of the bush and did a judo throw on them. Wait a minute. I know that move. Could it be? Oh no! It was my mom! What was she wearing? She was in full army gear. She even had binoculars. Jeez, Mom, what were you doing looking like a G.I. Joe? I couldn't hold my tears and I cried out, "Oh my God, why can't you leave me alone? You're ruining everything!" Then I ran back to the camp. She left after that, but I felt so embarrassed for the rest of the trip. When I returned home, my mom immediately said sorry to me and swore that something like that would never happen again. Okay, I could see in her eyes that she really meant it, so I would give her another chance. She calmed down a lot after that, and even let me go to school by myself. Well, that was big progress, don't you think? Soon after that, I started to date this boy named Kevin, and boy, was he hot! He was one of the popular kids at school, so I still couldn't believe he chose me. I don't know how Mom found out about him, but she did, and she insisted on inviting him over for dinner. I made her agree not to do anything crazy. I mean, what was the worst that could happen? The dinner was going well, until we got to dessert. Then Mom started asking him awkward questions, like, "Kevin, How many girls have you dated? And I assume you two have health classes at school? Or should I remind you of some important facts? Oh, sweet Jesus, Mom! Her questions were beyond embarrassing. Kevin just sat there with a super awkward smile on his face and didn't answer. But then Mom announced it was very late and practically shoved him out of the house. It was only 8:30 p.m. After he left, I went straight to my mom and we started arguing. Mom, you agreed not to do anything crazy. Why can't you act like a normal mom? She replied, Oh, honey, that Kevin guy is really cute, but he's not good for you. I know his type. They only want to take advantage of girly girls like you. What? Girly girls like me? What was that supposed to mean? I shouted back, You're doing it again! You're being overprotective. That's because you're not tough enough. If you wouldn't be so girly and be a badass like your mom, I wouldn't have to protect you all the time. I stormed up to my room and slammed the door shut. I was so going to prove to her that she was wrong about Kevin and that I didn't need her protection. Fortunately, Mom hadn't scared Kevin off. Phew! He told me that his parents were super embarrassing too. One evening, Kevin took me to this nice restaurant. There were candles, live music, and the food was delicious. It was so romantic. Then he touched my hand and leaned in closer. This was so exciting. I was about to have my first kiss. Suddenly, someone banged on the table nearby and ruined the moment. That's when I noticed they had a keychain on their bag that looked exactly like the one I'd made once at summer camp. I stood up and walked toward the table. A middle-aged lady with blonde hair and sunglasses was sitting there. I tried to look at her face, but it was like she was avoiding me. I took a closer look, and I couldn't believe it. I ripped the wig off her head, and yes, it was my beloved mother again! To be honest, I didn't want to argue with her anymore. Today was proof that she just couldn't change. So I just said in a calm voice, I hate you, Mom. You're the worst mom ever. Then I grabbed Kevin's arm and ran out of there. Okay, maybe what I said was a bit harsh, but she just ruined what would have been my first kiss. I couldn't concentrate on our date after that, so I asked Kevin to take me home. But to my surprise, he drove me back to his place. Uh-oh, I knew what that meant. But I wasn't ready for any of that yet, so I told him I'd get an Uber. Suddenly, he grabbed my arm and tried to drag me into his house. I couldn't believe this was actually happening. Mom was so right about him. I was freaking out. But then suddenly, I remembered something important that she'd taught me, so I used her signature judo move on him. It worked, as he laid on the ground and groaned out in pain. Ha! And that's when my mom arrived on her motorbike. As soon as I saw her, I ran over to her, hugged her tight, and cried like a baby in her arms. You must be wondering how my mom found me. Well, when Kevin came by to have dinner, she pickpocketed his phone and hacked it so she had access to all his messages and location. So after I dragged him out of the restaurant, he texted his friends saying he was trying to get in bed with me at all costs, which my mom saw, so she rushed to rescue me. Oh God, Mom, that was so not okay. But what could you expect from a criminal investigator? When we arrived home, we had a serious talk. To my surprise, she admitted that she was wrong about me. She saw now that I was able to take care of myself. That judo move I did on Kevin really impressed her. See? Girly girls can kick some butt too. So from that moment on, things between us improved lots. Turns out, my mom isn't so annoying after all. I realize now that she's pretty cool, and all the things she did were just to protect me. Okay, so maybe she took it to the extreme levels, but she did it with good intentions. Thanks to my mom, I feel stronger now. You know what they say, I'm a strong woman because a strong woman raised me. Although, one thing's for sure, I won't be borrowing her clothes anytime soon.
Hey, I'm Henry, and I'm a 23-year-old from Hamburg, and I have one question. You must have heard of K-pop, right? So, any K-pop fans in the house? Of course, I'm one. To be specific, I am an ARMY, a true BTS stan. Oh, and for those who don't know, stan is slang for when you're a big fan of something. Anyway, I can proudly say I'm obsessed with K-pop, and it's such a fun journey, right? But not everyone gets it. In fact, this is my story about how people treated me for being a fanboy, and it gets pretty dramatic. So, people always think that we like K-pop just because the idols are good-looking. But no, that's not only it. Seriously, I bet those who hate K-pop haven't even given it a proper listen. So you K-pop haters, just hear me out, and I'll start by tracing all the way back to the beginning of that life-changing moment when I first discovered K-pop. It all started when my classmate Chrissy was watching this music video called Dope during recess. I got curious and joined her. And oh boy, I never seen something so incredible before. The camera work, the choreography, it was unreal. I couldn't get the song out of my head, and the video was so much fun to watch. They didn't need hot girls nor supercars to make it eye-catching. It's pure talent only. After that, I started to listen to more K-pop and became a multi-stan, but BTS is always my one true love. I love them, and I wouldn't mind sharing all about it on my Instagram, which also helps me make friends with a lot of other ARMY from all around the world. Mostly girls, but a lot of guys too. And they often message me saying how much they admire me for being so open about my love for K-pop. They say they wish they had the same courage I did, since a lot of them got made fun of for liking Korean male artists. How ridiculous is that? It's 2021. We can like who we like, and we shouldn't have to keep quiet about our passions. However, I totally understood how they felt. I've been there, and it was rough. One time in high school, I'd been so excited to show Chrissy my new BTS album. We were screaming and squealing as I carefully flipped through each page as if it was my most prized possession, when some jock walked by with his crew and snatched it out of my hand. Then he said, "What is this tween magazine? Didn't they all have plastic surgery, right?" Then another guy said, "Why do you like these guys? Are you gay or something?" Then they all walked off laughing. I was so angry I wanted to kick them so far off the earth, even Google wouldn't be able to find him. But I couldn't do anything. They were way bigger than me and would crush me into a pulp if I even tried. So I came up with a better idea. I started going to the gym. I wanted to be buff like Jungkook. Then I wouldn't be afraid of any losers picking on me and my boys anymore. Oh, and by the way, I'm not gay. That's just another thing us fanboys have to deal with. There's nothing wrong with being gay, but just assuming I am because I like K-pop is silly. K-pop is for anyone and everyone. Anyway, after high school, things were looking up as people in college were less nosy. We'd all grown up, and you won't believe how muscular I'd become. Girls started showing interest in me, but there was only one girl I had eyes for. Her name was Kayla, and she was so cute. However, there was just one tiny problem. And by tiny, I mean huge. She didn't like K-pop. Once when we were studying, she sat closer to me and asked with a smile, "What are you listening to?" Then she took one side of my earphones. "What is this? Some kind of chanting?" Then she just went back to reading with a disgusted look on her face. What? That was my bias. Rap Monster was spitting fire. I didn't know she was that tasteless, but I let it slide this time, since I didn't want to make a big deal out of it in the library. After that, things got worse, and her hatred for K-pop became more obvious. Every time I talked about it, she rolled her eyes and changed the subject. And when the new music videos came out, and I couldn't wait to show her, she'd just scroll on her phone and ignore it. Other than that, she was always so sweet, and so we kept on dating. But we shouldn't have. One time, we were hanging out at the mall, and it was a pretty special day for me as it was BTS's debut anniversary. I was so excited and had even worn my BTS crossbody bag with a Koya keychain to complete the look. I thought I looked cool, but Kayla burst out laughing when she saw me and said, "OMG, did you borrow your sister's bag or something?" I tried to explain to her and said, "No, it's mine, and this is my baby Koya." But she just cut me off and rolled her eyes, as she said we'd be late for the movies. She kinda killed my vibe, but it was BTS day, so I wouldn't let anything ruin it. We were lining up to buy popcorn when I felt someone tap me on the shoulder. "Excuse me, I couldn't help noticing your Koya. Are you perhaps an ARMY?" I finished his sentence with a scream. We were both excited. We basically talked in gibberish that probably only ARMY could understand. Turns out J-Hope was his bias, and his name was Craig. Then he even gifted me some photo cards he'd just printed out. I was so immersed in the conversation with him, I forgot Kayla was even there, until Craig said to her, "Oh, hey, who's your bias? I might have some cards for you too." Kayla looked offended and said, You guys are sick. What a pair of losers. I've had enough of this K-pop stuff. Then she stormed off. We were left stunned, but oh well. If she couldn't respect my hobby and love me for who I am, then fine. Good riddance, Kayla. After that, Craig and I went to a cafe to talk everything BTS. And until this day, we're still good friends. And I'm grateful he saved me from dating that awful girl any longer. After that relationship, I gave my love life a bit of a break, as I was busy with streaming music videos, voting for BTS on award shows, and catching up with all of their content, on top of studying. I was perfectly happy living my little fanboy life without any girl. But then one day, everything changed. I was on the bus to class because I wasn't feeling well enough to drive after a white night watching BTS's live stream. I must have dozed off because the next moment I woke up and I was leaning on some girl's shoulder. I quickly apologized to her and she just giggled. Then I took a proper look, and oh my gosh, I've never met such a beautiful girl in my life. She was like a mixture of all 4 members of Blackpink. Luckily, I was smart enough to ask her for her number, and offered to buy her a drink to make up for almost drooling on her shoulder. After class, we met at a Starbucks and immediately hit it off. Her name was Clara, and she was so smart and pretty. I gotta make her mine. So I decided to change my tactic a little. I would wait a bit before telling her I was a fanboy. And instead, I focused on finding out more about her first and making it clear I really liked her. Then, when the right time came, I'd share with her my passion for K-pop. Pretty soon we got quite serious and did everything together, and I finally felt the moment had come. I was driving her home and decided to put my K-pop playlist on. To my surprise, she looked interested and asked what it was. I told her how much I loved it, and then nervously asked her, "Are you really okay with it?" Because usually when I tell people, they make fun of me. She just smiled and said, "Okay, now it's my turn." Then she put on some death metal, which almost made my hair stand on end. She laughed and said, "I know how you feel. Death metal isn't everyone's cup of tea either, but hey, we're allowed to like whatever we want, right? I respect that you love K-pop." Oh my gosh, could Clara be any more perfect? I can't wait to show her my room too. But unexpectedly, on the night I invited her over, her face changed as she saw all my posters and merch. I showed her my collections, my dolls, my pictures, but she just smiled and stared at me. Then she took my hand and said, "Henry, this is really cool, but don't you think it's a bit much? I know you love them, but you should maybe start spending your money on stuff for your future too." Then she told me she wanted to go home. Can't deny that I was hurt, but I knew that she's the one for me, and she just needed a little time to really understand that this was more than just a hobby for me. So I was determined to get her to like K-pop. I started sending her songs and recommending her some Korean shows to watch. Once, I even pretended I was taking her out for a picnic, but I took her to an army fest. Clara went along with it all, but she didn't seem too interested. Then came the best news ever. I found out BTS was going to have a concert in London. I was desperate to go and told Clara about flying there for the concert, but she said, "Henry, isn't that the same day as our marketing contest? There will be headhunters there and everything. You can't miss it. This is your chance to secure a good job." I didn't care and replied with a joke, "But I've been waiting to see them my whole life. This is a dream come true. Who needs a job when you have BTS? I'm going to London, baby." But Clara didn't laugh. In fact, she got super angry and started shouting at me saying that I was so immature and that if I didn't grow up soon, she couldn't be with me anymore. She was even crying, saying she needed a responsible man who was thinking about his future as she stormed off. After that, she gave me the silent treatment. I was stuck in a dilemma. It was my biggest dream to see BTS live, but why did this feel so wrong? I decided to wait a few days to think it all through, and eventually I realized there would be other concerts, right? I really couldn't skip the contest. I mean, how else would I support BTS without money? I did need a job. So even though it broke my fanboy heart, I told Clara I'd skip the concert this time and go to the contest. Clara immediately grinned and said, "Really? I'm so proud of you, Henry." Then she gave me a big kiss, and I reminded myself this was all worth it. And at least I still had my girlfriend. But suddenly Clara started speaking again. "Henry, there's something I need to tell you. Actually, Professor Geller has told me that the contest has been put off temporarily. So this was just a test." Then she said she just wanted to see if I could figure out my priorities. She loved how passionate I was about K-pop, but everything needed balance, and she wanted to make sure I would take other parts of my life as seriously as I took K-pop. Then she handed me her phone and said, "Look." I couldn't believe it. It was 2 tickets to the BTS show. She'd bought them for me. I was so happy I burst into tears and couldn't stop hugging her. I thought that was the happiest moment of my life. But the BTS concert was, especially as Clara was by my side. We're currently still together, and guess what? She even biases Jin now. She's seriously the perfect girl for me, and I can't wait to spend my life with her. If in 2031 you ever see a family of 4 screaming their heads off at a BTS concert, chances are it's me and Clara and our future kids. Don't be shy. Come say hi.
Hey, I'm Callie. I'm almost 16, but I could live in peace only in the first 2 years of my child's life, until my little brother, Ethan, came along and ruined everything. I always hoped that little brat had never been born. And if you're the oldest sibling like I am, then chances are you'll feel the same way as I do. Firstly, his birth meant that my parents barely noticed me anymore. Yeah, I know I was 2 back then, so I don't actually remember this, but as the years passed by, I saw how it was. I got into trouble for dumb things because I was the oldest, while Ethan got away with everything because he was too young to understand. Ugh, I really hate my brother. And I could tell tons of reasons for that. We always fought over the last slice of pizza. When he got it, he'd eat it open-mouthed in front of me, and Mom would smile and say, "Ah, my growing boy." But when I got it, Mom would frown at me and say, "Callie, don't be greedy." Ugh! He'd sneak into my room and took the plushy bunny my bestie gave me and superglued its ears together. So I took his Switch and hid it in the basement. It took him an entire week to find it. Ha! In revenge, he smeared chocolate over the back of my pants. I only realized what was going on when other kids started laughing and pointing at me. I had to wear my sweater tied around my waist for the rest of the day, even though it was freezing. So, I retaliated by rubbing stinging nettles on his pillow. The next morning, his face was bright red, and he couldn't stop itching. It was so funny. It was also a photo shoot day. So much to his protests, a makeup artist spent ages applying makeup on him to cover up the redness. He looked so ridiculous. You see, my dad's a politician, so sometimes we have to appear in photo shoots where we look like a loving, harmonious family. Pfft, as if. I could play pretend for the cameras, but in reality, I really just wanted to kick my brother's butt. We just didn't get on at all. He's such a brat. So I guess pranking each other was our coping strategy. I mean, hey, it isn't easy living with someone you hate. Our pranks happen so often that our parents just let us get on with it. However, there is one thing Ethan is terrified of. It all started back when he was 8, and Dad was watching The Walking Dead. Me and Ethan walked into the room just as there was a zoom-in scene in which a zombie was having a feeding frenzy. Being the brave girl, I thought it was interesting and sat down and watched it with Dad. But my bro, being the wuss, he screamed, then ran out of the room, hid under our parents' bed, burst into tears, and refused to move for 2 hours because he was convinced that at the sight of that zombie, he knew he must be chosen, and zombies were going out to get him. Gotta Achilles heel. So, not long after that, when he dropped my brand new headphones down the toilet, which made me have to put my hand in to pick it up, I decided to get revenge on him. And luckily for me, Halloween was just around the corner. Perfect. I binge-watched makeup tutorials on YouTube and practiced on my friends. Then on Halloween, I turned myself into a seriously scary zombie, hid the video camera in his room, got into his closet, and made grumbling and moaning sounds. When he opened the closet door, I jumped out at him and tackled him to the floor. OMG, he screamed so loudly, and he actually peed his pants. And now, all these years later, I still have it on video to torment him with. Ha! But don't be fooled, as my brother was not your average kiddie. It wasn't that long ago that he played a prank on me, which made me madder than Misty from Pokemon. So, I had a crush on this boy from school. He was just so sweet and dreamy, and from the cute glances he kept on giving me, I was 100% sure he liked me too. Valentine's Day seemed like the perfect day to express my feelings toward him. So I stayed up until midnight the night before, making chocolate for him. I left my chocolates lovingly wrapped and boxed on the side in the kitchen and went to bed. The next day, I grabbed the box and at lunchtime, I handed it to my crush. To my utter dismay when he opened it, instead of the lovely heart-shaped chocolates I'd spent hours making, there were embarrassing childhood pics of me, including a photo from when I was 12 with a bunch of hideous pimples on my face. One of me as a toddler sleeping with my mouth open and saliva drool on my chin, and one of me as a baby with a bowl of food mush on my head. Then my crush lifted up a note saying, "Great chocolates, sis." That sneaky brat. Although my crush kept saying that I looked really cute in those photos and he liked them even more than chocolates, I still wanted to give that brat a hard punch right in his annoying face. Oh God, I'm begging you, please take him away from me. I'll be good. I'll do my homework on time, and I'll stop borrowing Mom's expensive perfume. Okay, so this may have been my wish, but I never expected that it would come true. It was a normal evening around the dinner table. Ethan was glued to his phone, and Mom got really annoyed and made him clear up the table. While he was doing that, I saw a message pop up on his phone from someone called Sophie, saying, "Okay, I'll see you in the front of the cinema at 8 p.m. I'm looking forward to it," smiley face. What? Ethan had a date? Oh, my sweet little bro. It was payback time for ruining my crush's chocolates. So I stealthily followed Ethan to the cinema. Because the cinema was pretty close to our home, we both walked. He cut through the park. Geez, it was creepy at this time. I swear the trees looked like monsters. Anyway, I saw something light up by my feet. I picked it up. It was Ethan's phone. What an idiot. I was so gonna make him work hard to get this back. As I walked out of the park, I saw a black van parked nearby. Suddenly, I heard a scream and saw two giant men trying to drag Ethan toward the back of the van. Ethan was crying and struggling with fierce resistance, but my weak, skinny 14-year-old brother was no rival for those two men. What? How dare they try and kidnap my brother? He might have been the most annoying human on the planet, but he was my annoying little brother. There's no way I was letting this happen. I rushed forward and shouted, "Ethan, zombie mode on!" My presence startled the two kidnappers, and this made them more intent on dragging him toward the van. When all of a sudden, Ethan bit down hard into the hand of the man who was covering his mouth, just like how zombies always do. Good one, bro. The man wept out and shook his hand. The other man pulled on Ethan's arm, but he managed to scramble to his feet. As the man tried to push him into the van, Ethan sought his opportunity and kicked him right between his legs. Ouch. While this was going on, I called the cops and told them to be quick. Then I saw the jerk with the bitten hand about to grab Ethan again. So I screamed out loud, "Ethan, run!" He sprinted off into the park and the bitten man followed him. It was exactly a real-life zombie chase. Huh. Suddenly, I felt arms grab me around the waist. Oh no, it was the other guy. He said, "I guess you'll have to go too," before he lifted me up and carried me over to the back of the van. I screamed out and tried hitting and kicking out, but he was too strong. He threw me into the back of the van before he could get in. I smashed the van door and quickly locked the door from the inside to knock him out. Lucky for me, not him, but the guy chasing Ethan was the one who was keeping the key. It was so scary when the kidnapper kept shouting at me outside, but I was even more frightened thinking Ethan could get hurt somewhere out there. Then suddenly I heard his voice. "Hey, stop!" Did he get caught? I looked out to see the contrary. He was running towards me after two police officials. They were holding their guns to control the guy standing by the van. Ethan was safe and came back for me. I opened the door and jumped into his arms. Oh, let's skip this part. I get goosebumps every time I recall this weepy situation. Me and Ethan followed the cops and saw the other kidnapper handcuffed to a tree, fighting with mosquitoes with his one free arm in the dark. The police told me that during the way heading to the van, Ethan kept on complaining about how slow and unprofessional they were, as they should come to save me first instead. My boy still stubbornly said, "I could run myself, but this wimp couldn't." The idiot definitely couldn't have imagined that he has a Wonder Woman big sister like me. Our parents rushed into the police department to see us. And yep, weepy part again. Turned out my dad's rival had hired the guy to kidnap Ethan so that they could use him to blackmail my dad. I don't clearly understand the whole situation. Maybe after this I'll watch more political movies, but now, thanks God, we're safe. I may have wished my brother would disappear, but when I actually could have lost him forever, well, I have to admit that it really freaked me out, And it turns out he felt the same way about me too. Crazy, huh? Of course, we still play pranks on each other. We wouldn't be us if we didn't. But I realized something. He might be the most annoying brat ever, but he's still my family. And I love my family so much. However, I'm pretty sure there'll still be times when I hate my annoying little bro. Like right now, while I'm sitting in my room telling you my story, I'm sure I can hear him giggling outside of my door. What's the betting I open it and end up with a bucket of cold water on my head or something? All this may because I have told my mom he has a girlfriend. Tough luck, little bro. There's no way you're getting the better of this pranking queen.
Hi, it's Sam again. I'm just your standard guy who, is pretending to be gay so that his fake fiance Julia has time to realize how much of a stud he is and fall for him. Yeah, I don't know how I got myself into this situation either. Things between Julia and me were going pretty well. Of course, there were a few awkward moments, but that's to be expected, right? One time, we were sitting on deck chairs in the living room, as we still hadn't replaced the couch, and we were watching a movie together. I noticed Julia wafting her hand in front of her and itching at her skin. Then she said, "It's too hot, I'm coming out in sweats." Being the gent I am, I replied, "Do you want me to get you an ice-cold glass of water?" "No," she shook her head. "It's just this stupid bra. I need it off right now. Don't look." Geez, this was way too much for me. I resembled a blushing tomato as I clumsily turned in another direction and looked out the window. But oh man, I can see her reflection in it. She was putting her hand inside her shirt, and after a second, she pulled her bra out. Oh wow. It was like watching a live performance of David Copperfield. On another occasion, I was in town when Julia texted me saying, "Hey bestie, could you please go to the shop for me? I forgot Aunt Flo was visiting today." Her aunt was coming over? Why didn't she mention it before? I tried to keep my cool and just texted back, "Okay, is your aunt staying for dinner?" Julia immediately rang me laughing hysterically. It turns out Aunt Flo means she was having her period. Oh my god, girls and their codes. But most memorable of all was the bathroom incident. Julia was taking a shower, but she didn't lock the door. Of course, I didn't realize she was in there, so I went inside to use the toilet. Right at that moment, Julia started getting out of the shower, saw me, freaked out, screamed, tripped, got caught up in the shower curtain, and fell onto the floor. I wanted to help, but it was kind of an awkward moment for me too, and I didn't know where to look, so I just ran out and closed the door. Regardless of awkward moments like that, I felt so happy being around Julia so much. Each day I found myself falling for her that little bit more. I even found her weird habits attractive, such as how she always slurped when drinking coffee. And she had a serious obsession with Post-it notes. She scribbled messages on them and stuck them around the house. I even found one stuck to the milk saying, "Drink me!" I loved her, and I was more determined than ever to conquer her heart. But then one day something horrible happened. She was over an hour late home for dinner, so I texted her asking where she was. She replied, "Sorry, I'm on a date, see you later." Oh no, I had to stop it. So I texted back, "Oh, it's just this idiot here has lost his keys. Where are you? Can I come borrow yours?" She replied with the name of some bar in town. Oh great, dating in bars was the worst. I immediately drove there, and as soon as I saw them, I rushed over and greeted them. When her jerky date asked me if I was Julia's friend, I gave him a big fat smile and replied, "Oh no, I'm her fiance." The look on his face was priceless. He instantly excused himself and ran off. Julia looked furious and started yelling at me. I told her it was an accident and the words just slipped out, but she didn't look convinced. Unfortunately, this didn't stop her from dating other guys. She turned into the dating queen. She was always scrolling through dating apps and taking new selfies for her profile pictures. Obviously, I wasn't happy about this, but she thought I was gay. So what was I meant to do about it? Then she took it too far. She invited one of these guys over to our place for dinner on our Wednesday taco night. How could she? I couldn't use the fiance trick anymore as Julia would kill me. So I had to think up another genius idea to send this jerk packing. She introduced me to him as her gay roommate. So while we were eating the delicious tacos that I had made, I thought up an awesome idea. I started touching this guy's arm and saying things like, "Ooh, you're so muscular. How often do you work out?" Then I turned up the heat and played some footsie under the table with him. He was smiling over at Julia. Poor guy must have thought it was her doing it. And when he bent under the table to pick up his fork, he saw it was my foot. He was so shocked that he hit his head on the table. That was hilarious. He made some excuse after that and left in a hurry. Julia was confused and didn't know what happened. And I just shrugged and said, I don't know, maybe he doesn't like tacos. Another success for me. Then, one day, Julia's parents were throwing an anniversary party, and of course, Julia and I had to appear like a loved-up couple. Fine by me. Julia was introducing me to some of her relatives, and I was impressing them with my charm when I noticed her stare off across the room. I followed her gaze and saw a guy hand in hand with a girl walking toward us. Turns out it was her cheater ex and her cousin. Worse still, they told us they were getting married and we were both invited to the wedding. Ugh, poor Julia clung to my arm. I could tell she was trying to hold in how furious she was, but she forced a smile and told them we were looking forward to it. After the party, she told me to go home first, as she had some business to take care of. I had a bad feeling about this, as I knew how upset she was about her ex. I didn't want her to leave by herself, so I followed her. One guess where a heartbroken, angry, miserable girl would go on a Saturday night. Yep, a noisy, sweaty club. Thank God I'd followed her. I stayed close and kept an eye on her. Seeing her ex must have triggered some bad memories because she was drinking a lot. Then 2 guys appeared and started talking to her. A moment later, they started to drag her away. She resisted, but that didn't stop them. So I rushed over, grabbed their shirts, gave them a dirty look, and said with a super deep voice like Thor, "Leave the girl alone." Oh man, they were so scared that they immediately left. Julia looked surprised and relieved to see me. I drove her home, and on the way, I asked her why she was still upset about her idiot ex. She sighed out, "I'm not. I just hate the fact that a jerk like him can marry someone and be happy. He doesn't deserve it, and it's so not fair." When we got out of the car, I put my hand on her shoulder, looked deeply into her eyes, and said, "That loser doesn't belong with a beautiful girl like you. Both him and your cousin are jerks, and they deserve each other." Julia nodded and smiled at me. After that, Julia and I continued our lives as a happily, albeit fake, engaged couple. I tried to take care of her and make her laugh as much as I could. But then Julia started to act weird, like she was avoiding me. She didn't talk to me much anymore and often came home late. Oh my God, wait. Was she dating again? I swear if anyone dared to flirt with my Julia, I wouldn't leave him alone. So I booked the day off work to spy on her. But that day when I woke up, Julia was nowhere to be found. Only one of her beloved Post-it notes was lying on her pillow. I read it and oh my God! "Sam, I have feelings for you, but I know you don't feel the same, so guess I shouldn't be around you anymore. The pain is too much. Julia, X." I couldn't believe it. I pressed that note to my chest. My sweet Julia, she had feelings for me. But she thought I was gay. Why was this so complicated? I tried calling her, but she didn't answer. Days passed, but there was still no sign of her. Then suddenly I remembered. The wedding. It was today. I was sure she would be there, as she wouldn't give them the satisfaction of being a no-show. I quickly put my Italian suit on. Wow, hey there, handsome chap. When I arrived at the wedding, the groom and bride were sharing their first dance. I looked around and saw Julia sitting alone in the corner and watching them dance. I did my best movie hunk walk over to her, held out my hand and asked her, "Madam, may I please have this dance?" Julia looked surprised. I was about to say something, but I dragged her over to the dance floor. "Sam, why are you here?" She asked me, but I didn't reply. Then she pushed me away, broke down in tears and said, "Please, just leave me alone. Can't you see that I've suffered enough?" I said to her, "Julia, why don't you see that you're my bubble tea girl? There's no one else like you." I hugged her tight, and then I did what I'd wanted to do since I started talking to her that day at the lake. I leaned in and kissed her. So, guess what happened next? Did she slap me across the face and call me a liar? Well, yes, after I told her everything. Geez, that girl has a slap on her. But then she hugged me and cried with joy. I couldn't imagine a better ending than this. Yeah, I know I did a crazy thing to win over my girl, and I don't recommend pretending to be gay to get close to someone. But you know what they say, falling in love makes you do dumb things. And boy, does Julia own my giant dumb heart.
All roads were blocked by snow. No one in their right mind would go outside in this weather. But that banging on the door still persisted and was only getting louder and louder. Could it be Yeti? I hugged my blanket and willed it to stop, but of course it didn't. I couldn't sleep in this frantic noise either, so Yeti or no Yeti, I needed to go check it out. So I crept over to the door. A rush of panic swam through me, as with a shaking hand I slightly opened it. Huh? Trevor? Yep, it wasn't any snowy monster. It was Trevor, about to faint from the cold, but his hands were still holding tightly onto something. Trembling, he said, "Here you go. Put on some more clothes. You'll catch a cold." Then he passed me my suitcase. Oh God, you're crazy, Trevor. You are the one who's catching all the cold right now. I immediately sat him down on the couch and placed the blanket around him, then quickly opened my suitcase. Here they are, my secret weapon, heat packs. I gave him some and got him another coat that wasn't covered in snow. Here, drink this first. I'll go make you a cup of cocoa. I began pouring him a cup of warm water out of my thermal bottle, but he stopped me. Power, out. He shivered out. Well, that explained why it felt like a freezer in here. And no more hot cocoa then. Hey, so I'm Autumn, and this is part 2 of my story. If you haven't seen part 1, you should go and check it out. Don't be fooled by my name. It was definitely winter here in Texas. And this storm was insane. Shame I was stuck in a holiday cottage with my treacherous best friend Lillian, her lying twin Seth, and his secret girlfriend Charlie. Ugh! Turns out, Lillian just wanted my Chicago clothes, and everyone, besides Trevor, was in on it. Back to Trevor. And I didn't want his death on my watch, so I rubbed his arms in a bid to defreeze him. When he looked like he'd thawed out a little, I raised an eyebrow and asked him, "Why did you go outside in this?" Well, the power went out. I knew it'd be Antarctica for you in here without a heater, so I wanted to go get you the suitcase. But I ended up locked out, so I had no choice but to wake you up to get in. I'm sorry." What are you sorry about? It was just a little dumb of you. After that, we chatted about stuff. To be honest, I was super touched by what he did. While everyone was still deep asleep, here he was, thinking about me and risking his life to help me. Okay, so maybe I was a little harsh to him earlier when he confessed that he liked me. But hey, that could still just be him trolling me. I mean, I have a valid reason not to trust anyone under this roof anymore. I guess I must have fallen asleep as, the next morning, I woke up to Lillian frantically shaking me. "Hey! Wake up! We're in big trouble!" Oh, so they'd finally noticed the power was out. I passed everyone jackets and heat packs from my suitcase. Look, guys, layering up in these conditions is vital. Then I looked at Seth and Trevor. Even if that does mean wearing my pink pom-pom hat and squeezing into my rainbow-padded coat. We couldn't help but burst out laughing. At least there's something fun to brighten up the situation. Then we started prepping to face this apocalypse. And I was the captain. Because, hey, I'm the one who had the most experience with snow around here. Time was of the essence, so I quickly went to check the faucet. Luckily, the water was still running, though the flow was a little weak. Quick, get anything that can contain water. We should store as much as we can before the pipes freeze up. Ugh, look at Seth and Charlie, being all playful and flirty, forming a bucket brigade, with Lillian too. What a thorn in the eyes. So I threw them some towels I'd found and ordered them to go windproof all the doors and windows instead, as Trevor could handle this water storage thing alone. Meanwhile, I checked on our food situation. Fortunately, we've brought enough for 2 days, but it's all frozen now, and we had to ration the food in moderation, as who knows how long this lockdown could be. Hey, should we try using that fireplace? It's freezing. even with these jackets on. Yeah, Seth. Why don't you figure it out?
Then we started cleaning up all the stuff in front of the fireplace, so Seth could give it a try. But oh boy, what did I expect? The most he managed to make was black smoke. Forget it. This is probably just a decorative fireplace. Y'all so dumb. Then Trevor appeared out of the basement with an armful of wood.
No, for sure it's usable. Look, I even found wood and coal stored here. Let me try.
He knelt down in front of the fireplace and started clearing the blockage to the chimney. After some time, it worked. Whoa! We had fire! We all whooped and jumped about like lunatics. Then Lillian wrapped her arms around Trevor's neck and kissed him on the cheek. Blushing, he immediately wiped it off with his hand, which then left some coal stains on his face. It was so funny. Trevor was our true hero again. While Seth... Well, thank God I didn't have a crush on that loser anymore. Poor Charlie. Have fun being stuck with that useless dude. Thanks to Trevor, we now had a fire to keep warm and to cook our food on. So we'd be fine, right?
Oh no! My phone's dead! Just when I think I caught a tiny bit of signal.
Gimme! Don't you know we can charge your phone with fruits? Seth grabbed Lillian's phone and charger and took them into the kitchen. Now that's strange. He has never looked so enthusiastic doing anything helpful during the past 2 days. He was probably trying to save his face after losing to Trevor so many times. Ha! I watched on with amusement as Seth stabbed the charger into a banana. What did I ever see in this guy again? Trevor burst out laughing, and Charlie sighed, then went off to prepare soup for dinner. Lillian folded her arms and pouted.
So? Hurry up!
Seth grunted, then fiercely stabbed the charger into the poor banana several more times. Jeez, it was so dumb and too funny to stop him.
Spare it! It won't work!
Ugh! You ruined my charger and wasted our food! I wish I could just throw you out into the storm! Seth shoved the mashed banana into his mouth. Who told you it's wasted? This is my dinner! Then he sulked off into the corner and covered himself with a blanket. Hilarious!
Hey, don't worry. I have a power bank in my room. I'll go get it.
Oh, sweet! You're indeed my knight in shining armor. Always come and save me in time. She winked, then hugged his arms. He quickly looked at me, then shook her off of him. What was that for? Was he serious when he said he liked me? He rejected Lillian more than twice. And to be honest, I did have this tingling feeling whenever there were only 2 of us in the room. I don't know anymore. Later that night, we decided to all gather in front of the fireplace to sleep, as it's the only warm place in the house. So me and the other girls went to the bedrooms to get the mattresses and blankets. Well, anything useful, really.
OMG, my brother's such a loser.
Lillian laughed as she picked up her pillow. Charlie smirked. Tell me about it. He actually stabbed a banana to death. The poor banana. I chuckled. Joking around with them actually felt kinda good. We were stuck in this house together till God knows when, so maybe I should stop being bitter towards them. Besides, I was totally over that useless loser Seth now anyway. Even Charlie wasn't on his side. We set up a cozy base in the living room and spent the next few days riding out the storm. On a few occasions, Lillian tried snuggling up to Trevor with some excuse about raising body heat, but he just shuffled away from her. So in the end, she made us all do cardio workouts, which did the trick, and it was really funny to watch each other struggle to do star jumps with 500 layers of clothes on. Charlie also taught us to play some card games to pass the time, such as solitaire and go fish, which I'm now a pro at. Seth and Trevor even picked up a new hobby of wood carving. But so far, I still couldn't tell what their artworks were supposed to be yet. And finally, after 4 days of isolation, the storm seemed to weaken. We started to get stable phone signal back. and we called our parents right away to update them on the situation. They said they would come pick us up as soon as possible. We were all so happy and also proud of ourselves. We'd survived this crazy storm. So, you're probably thinking this is the happy ending? Not so fast. When we were all FaceTiming Lillian and Seth's parents, their mom suddenly said to Charlie, "Thank you so much for helping us keep an eye on the kids. We'll definitely add a nice bonus onto your salary this month." We were all stunned. I don't even know if it's for the same reason, but why was Seth's mom paying his girlfriend? Lillian clumsily said goodbye to her mom and ended the call immediately, then tried to clear up the atmosphere with her fake laugh. Y'all know how my mom loves to give her dear nieces and nephews some extra pocket money whenever she sees them. Okay, what are we having for lunch today, guys? Just stop it. I know your secret already. Charlie and Seth are a couple, aren't they? But why is your mom paying her? That's sick. Lillian, Seth, and Charlie all shouted out in unison, "What?" Lillian gave me a questioning look. Autumn, what are you talking about? Yeah, I'm sorry for lying to you, but no, Charlie is not Seth's girlfriend. She's our tutor. Liar? If so, then why did you have to hide it? My parents didn't trust us staying in this place by ourselves, so they asked Charlie to supervise. And come on, we're 16. We don't need a babysitter. That's embarrassing. Yeah, I thought it's just a harmless lie, so I agreed to go along with them. I mean, we still had fun together, right? But who told you we were a couple? I was about to reply, but then Trevor dragged me to another room while saying to the others, "She needs to calm down first. Let me take care of this." Now we were alone. I gave him an "I'm waiting" look. "Okay, hear me out first, okay?" I nodded, then he sighed and continued. "Lillian does like you, and she did actually want to help you get with Seth, but he wasn't interested. So she promised him a month's worth of pocket money to stay here." I didn't really buy it, but let's see what else he's got. Okay then, but that doesn't change the fact that Seth and Charlie had something going on. Duh. That kiss? Actually, that wasn't real. I just dared Seth to do it. Charlie really is just their tutor. What was he talking about? I felt like the room started spinning. Look, I really do like you, Autumn, and I know I should never have lied about stuff, but it was only so you'd give me a chance. Only, Lillian now thinks I like her, and I never meant to give her the wrong impression. How dare he trick me like that? So I screamed at him. "I will never, ever like you! Your actions have just made me hate you even more!" Thanks to him, I misjudged Lillian, Charlie, and Seth. Although, to be honest, Seth might not have been a liar, but he was still so not my type. Trevor gave me this disheartened look as he stared down at the ground. Then he muttered out a, "Sorry." I didn't want to hear any more of his pathetic apologies, so I huffed my way out of there and sat on the freezing porch until my parents finally arrived. After that, things went back to normal. School resumed. Lillian and I are the best of friends, and she now calls me her snowstorm bestie. Aw. As for Trevor, I now avoid him as much as possible. I know he stares over at me at school. I can feel his gaze on me. But as soon as I look in his direction, he quickly turns away. I guess I do like him, okay? I don't agree with what he did, but I've got to admit, it sure takes a witty, imaginative guy to come up with a plan like that on the spot. Okay, fine. I'll give him another chance and see where things go. And if there's ever another snowstorm, well, then I suppose he's a handy guy to have around.
Really? You're from Korea? No way. You sound just like a native speaker.
Richard jumped up in surprise as I told him I came from South Korea. Yeah, I'm 100% Korean, I answered him, giggling. I had spent hours every day practicing my English. Guess it has paid off. But that was 6 years ago already. I'm Jenny, by the way, and I'm Korean. At the time I was 21, I joined an online English speaking club where I first met Richard, who never in a million years did I think I'd fall in love with. But that's exactly what happened. Ever since that very first class, we started talking every day, and the sparks between us were undeniable. He always mentioned how he wished I could be in the Czech Republic with him, and I found myself daydreaming about our future wedding. Okay, so I was getting ahead of myself, but he was just so amazing. After a month of talking nonstop, I realized I was probably going to fail college if I didn't start setting my priorities straight. But all I could think about was him. And whenever we weren't chatting, I was stalking him on social media. And every time I saw him tagged with another girl, I got so jealous. This couldn't be healthy. I mean, I hadn't even met him in real life, but still, we continued to fall for each other. And he even introduced me to his two best friends, Anastasia and Pavel, via video chat. But not as blossoming as my love life, I was failing miserably at college. I'd always been the one who laughed at my lovesick friends, and now I was no better than them. This wasn't right. Something had to change. So even though it was killing me inside to do this, one night before sitting down on my desk to work on my assignment, I just picked up my phone and blocked his WhatsApp, deactivated my Facebook, and all without letting him know. Yep, I full-on ghosted him. It was such a hard decision, because that night, instead of getting anything done for the assignment, I found myself lying in bed with a tear-soaked pillow. It hurt so much, but I had to think about my future. My parents would kill me if I didn't get a good job. I couldn't let them down. Anyway, Pavel messaged me a few days later saying Richard had gone totally crazy and he'd never seen him this upset before. He barely ate anything and would drink all day. He's not much different from a zombie now. But I stayed unfazed. Bet he'd be okay, though. He was young and handsome, and girls were always after him. He'd get over me soon. And I'd get over him, right? If only it were that easy. I missed him every single day. Even though we'd been thousands of miles apart, he somehow always made me feel so safe, like he was right there next to me. What had I done? I'd ruined everything. Ugh! Instead of wasting time overthinking, it'd be better to put all my energy into my studies for now, right? And it worked. When graduation came around, I was the top student in my class and even got accepted on an exchange program in Australia. Without even thinking, I texted Richard to tell him the good news. I apologized for disappearing on him and said it had messed with my mind because I hadn't expected to fall for him so hard. I had just needed some time to finish my studies, but now I was ready to reconnect again. Well, he'd seen my messages, but there was no reply. It felt like someone had punched me in the heart. Hours later, he finally replied and said, "Sorry, Jenny. I'll get in touch soon. Now isn't the best time." I couldn't believe the words I was reading. I could actually hear the sound of my heart shattering, but it served me right. I was the one who'd gotten rid of him. He deserved better. But still, I stalked him every day online, and then I realized the only way to solve this would be to fly to the Czech Republic and find him. First, though, I had my exchange program in Australia. I bought a new phone and got a new number for the trip to leave my old one in Korea for my uncle who was always complaining about his outdated phone. Those 3 months in Australia were awesome, and I got my mind off things for a little. I was ready to start fresh when I got back from the trip, until my uncle told me that someone had texted me on my old phone, but because he didn't know English, he didn't know if it was for me or not. I immediately checked it, and there was a message from Richard that said, "Jenny, I'm so sorry for my last message. I miss you so much. Your smile, your eyes, your voice. I hope you can give me another chance. Love, Richard." OMG! Months had passed since he'd sent it, and the worst part of all is that my uncle had read the message, and so it said seen. This was a disaster. Okay, but I had to focus on the positive. He missed me. Maybe it wasn't too late. I tried to call him, but he didn't answer, so I texted him and explained what had happened. He finally replied and said he thought I'd given up on him. I'd never give up on him. We then had a proper phone call. "I am still thinking about you all the time. Why didn't you send me a Facebook message?" The words tumbled out of my mouth in a rush, as if I was afraid I would lose contact with him again in any sec. Suddenly, he went all quiet, and then he told me he'd recently met someone, and that he hoped I'd understand and still want to be friends. I felt devastated. Why was it so hard for us? But in the end, there was no other choice for me. I just wished him well and hung up. All I could do now was move on. It was time to find someone else to date. Clearly, Richard and I weren't meant to be. My heart hurt, but I found a job and threw myself into it, giving it all my attention. Eventually, I got promoted, and after 5 years, I was able to help my parents pay off their debt. I even moved up to a management position. Of course, during this time, I dated a bit, but I couldn't make any of the relationships last. I just missed Richard all the time. I kept dreaming of us spending Christmas together. It was so frustrating. I mean, it had been 5 years, and we hadn't spoken at all. Why couldn't I just get over him? I occasionally went on his Facebook page, but all I could see was his profile pic that remained the same for years. I'd unfriended Anastasia and Pavel, too, so I couldn't stalk them either. For all I knew, he could be someone's husband now, maybe even a dad. And yet still, I never gave up hope that maybe we'd meet in real life, our paths would cross, and we'd finally get to be together. I couldn't stop thinking about this. And then 3 weeks before Christmas, I got a new following request on Instagram. I couldn't believe it. It was Pavel, and he was now married to Anastasia. This made me so happy. And he told me they were going on their honeymoon to Korea and hoped to see me. OMG, this was so exciting. I desperately wanted to ask him about Richard, but I was terrified to hear that he had kids or something. Anastasia messaged me too and asked how I was doing. I told her I was still single because I worked all the time. Hey, there was no way I could tell her it was because I was still obsessed with Richard. Anyway, the week flew by, and finally I was at the airport awaiting to meet Pavel and Anastasia in real life. They both looked so sweet, and I gave them the biggest hugs. After hugging them, I noticed someone standing behind them. OMG. Was that Richard? What was he doing there? I was so stunned I couldn't move. It was really him. Pavel broke the silence by saying, "We brought Richard along for you, Jenny. Feel free to hit him, bite him, kick him, or whatever you want to do if you think he deserves it." Out of complete shock, I just burst into tears. It had been 6 long years of total silence, and now here he was, looking at me. I asked myself, could I hug him? But I didn't even get a chance to answer my thought because he ran towards me and picked me up in his arms, squeezing me tightly. Then he whispered in my ear, "I'm so sorry, Jenny. Please don't cry. I'm here. I won't leave you. I promise." Could I trust him, though? I was still in shock as I drove them to their hotel, and then again later when I drove to take them out for some Korean food. I was nervous about hanging out with them all, but we seriously had the best night eating, drinking, and laughing. The next day, Pavel and Anastasia would start their honeymoon. So maybe then Richard and I would have some time alone together to talk about whatever was left between us. After dropping them back at their hotel, I was driving away when suddenly I saw Richard running back towards me. He said he wanted to tell me something, so I pulled over and we sat down on a bench to talk. I listened as he told me that over the past 6 years he tried to date other girls, but it never worked out because I was always in the back of his mind. He said he'd spend most of his time working so he could save up to visit me or buy me a ticket so I could come and visit him. It had taken him longer than he'd hoped because his parents had got divorced and he'd been looking after his mom, who was super depressed. A few months later, she was diagnosed with cancer, and so he'd had to work even harder to help her pay for treatment. After 3 long years of fighting, she sadly passed away. And ever since then, he'd been feeling so lonely and sad. One day, he asked Pavel to contact me somehow, and when he found out I was still single, he was over the moon and decided it was finally time to come to Korea and see me. He said seeing me in real life had made him fall even more in love with me, which he hadn't thought was even possible. Then he hugged me tight and I couldn't stop crying. We spent Christmas together, just like I always dreamt of. And well, the rest is history. Here I am now, packing my bags to fly to the Czech Republic to see Richard. I can't wait to meet his family. And you'll never believe it, but we're even planning our wedding. The big question is, where do we live? Should I go there, or should he move to Korea? To be honest, it doesn't matter. As long as we're together, it'll be perfect. So it's true what they say. If something is meant to be, it'll be. Even if it takes a year or 6. All I know is that I'm glad I had the patience, because I've never been happier.
Why do we have to study logarithms? Will they help us with stockbroking? Surely not. Why suddenly create the X and then force us to find it? And why do I have to prove that it's an isosceles triangle? I see clearly that it is. Duh!
Then I received the note back saying, "What are you two talking about?" I just figured that another kid had intercepted it. So with my eyes still glued to my level 3692 of Candy Crush, I scrawled back, "Keep your nose out of my business," and then handed the paper over without looking. Ahem. But your business is taking place in my class. I slowly looked up and saw that it was my teacher. Oh, dang. Busted again. Looking over, I saw Brett with his big guilty face. Ugh, he should have been more careful. Okay, you. And you. Out. You're probably wondering how I'm such a pro at this pose. Well, it's because I've done it 1,000 times. And that serious woman over there is Mrs. Megan, my math teacher. I swear, she totally has it in for me. Okay, let me tell you the story. Once upon a time, there was a girl who, due to an unexpected accident with a trash can and an ill-placed skateboard, ended up arriving a teensy bit late for her exam. But the teacher refused to let her in, and also failed her. Grrr. Yeah, that girl was me, Lexi. Thus, from that moment forth, she became my arch enemy. So, during her boring lecture, I threw a paper plane at the board and said, "Miss, you've spelled arithmetic wrong. I suppose spelling is a bit hard for a numbers person like you. It's okay." Clearly my comment got to her, as during that same class, she picked on me to graph a function. Easy peasy. So I created a masterpiece that made her eyes roll, and the whole class found it hilarious. And as expected, she gave me a lengthy lecture on my childish behavior, and even threatened to call my parents. Poof! Yeah, good luck with that, as unless it involved business, then my parents were practically impossible to reach. Besides, I was just having a laugh. Mrs. Megan needed to lighten up. So I secretly stuck a piece of paper saying "free hugs" on her back. I lurked behind a tree and watched as all these people surrounded her. She looked so bewildered as she tried to navigate past them while having no idea what was going on. The good old days. Suddenly, Brett patted my shoulder and told me 30 minutes had passed and we needed to go back to class. My butt hadn't even touched my chair when I heard a patronizing voice say, "You shouldn't act like that." Ugh, that's Faye, the teacher's pet and a real pick-me girl. Every time the teacher asks a question, she wriggles her arm in the air and squeaks out, "Me, me, me!" Mrs. Megan only likes her because she always laughs at her boring jokes. Oh well, I may have no proof, but in my experience, Faye's definitely not as innocent as she looks. Don't say I'm jealous, 'cause I'm 100% not. You probably think I hate school, but it's still way better than my so-called home. Ugh. At least school could be amusing, while my home life consisted of mom and dad locked away in their office 24/7. I can't remember the last time either of them cooked dinner. So takeaway it is. So I'm texting Ben, my super sexy BF. He's been studying in France, and he's back today. I've missed him so much, but unfortunately, I couldn't pick him up from the airport because of, school. And tonight, he has a family party, but we're meeting up tomorrow. Yay! Let me see your face, sweetie. I miss you. You know what? Today, that teacher gave me detention again. Really? She messed with the wrong one, didn't she? Definitely. I will retaliate tomorrow. She'd better watch out. Okay, but don't end up in after-school detention, as I want to see you. My mom's also a teacher, but she's not that much. Oh, by the way, she's here. You want to say hello? Yeah, sure. Ben, it gets on my nerves whenever I think of that Before I had a chance to finish my words, a person popped up on the screen. Mrs. Megan! Lexi? OMG! We both gave each other stunned, open-mouthed stares. It looked like the screen had frozen. Literally! Then just when I didn't think it could get any worse, Suddenly, a familiar voice broke the silence.
Oh, Ben has a girlfriend? Let me see her.
Huh?
That's Faye!
Oh my days, this is too much to process. My two enemies were in the same frame. Shocked, I ended the call. Right after, I received a text from Ben saying, "Don't worry, my mother may look super serious, but she's kind. And the girl is Faye, my neighbor. We've known each other since childhood, and she's cool."
This was so crazy.
Now I'd have to face them both every day, knowing that they're associated with my BF. Oh, the future is as dark as night. And yeah, this is the beginning of the series thusly entitled Living with My Future Mother-in-Law and My BF's Annoying Female Best Friend. And since then, things at school turned weird. For our class Halloween event, which had a Toy Story theme, Mrs. Megan was in charge of handing out the parts. Faye was Bo Peep, and she had this really cute outfit. While me, I was stuck as Mrs. Potato Head. My outfit was so lame, and one of my googly eyes kept on falling off. Ugh! It was so embarrassing, but I couldn't say anything. I couldn't mess with her anymore, as I still wanted to be with her son. Ugh. Worse still, math class became an endurance test. I was so sick of being compared to that goody two-shoes Faye.
Lexi, if you spent more time studying and less time painting your nails, you'd be a top student like Faye.
Poof! Faye caught on to what was going on and also started playing tricks on me. One time in class, when I was dozing and Mrs. Megan was correcting the homework, I overheard, "This symbol shows that A is not equal to B." Faye then turned around and whispered,
"Just like you're not equal to me. And you don't deserve my Ben either."
What? Ben is mine, not hers. I bared my teeth and was about to say something when that brat started pretending to cry, saying that I was picking on her. "Out!" Mrs. Megan came to us with burning eyes. We were walking out when in a sympathetic tone she added, "Faye, you stay." I returned to my meditating pose, but I couldn't shake off my anger. How unfair! Later, when it was lunchtime, Faye walked over to me with a cup of Coke, saying it was a peace offering, and that she was sorry for earlier. This was confusing, but whatever. I took it and was about to take a sip when Brett rushed over waving his arms about. "Lexi, stop!" I saw Faye put soy sauce in it. I was just a second away from yelling at her when Mrs. Megan appeared. I smiled smugly, thinking Faye would finally get into trouble. But to my surprise, Mrs. Megan took a sip of the drink and tried to keep a neutral face as she replied, "There's nothing wrong with it." Really? They went that far to cover up for each other? Whatever. I had a date with Ben tonight to prepare for anyway. That night as planned, I arrived at Ben's house with a somewhat wilting pot plant for Mrs. Megan. I was kinda excited to finally have a cooked meal. Only, when I walked into the kitchen, I couldn't smell anything cooking. Mrs. Megan appeared and rubbing her hand said, "Lexi, you don't mind cooking, do you? It's just been a long week of drawing diagrams. My hand kinda aches." Seeing the situation, Ben immediately came to help, but she reminded him that he'd agreed to fix a pipe or something. To be honest, I'd never touched a frying pan before. But I mean, how hard could it be? I'd make pancakes, though it's not really suitable for dinner, but I'd seen them on a 5-minute crafts and they were clearly a breeze to make. Only, it didn't go to plan. In situations like this, it's important not to panic. But, yeah, I panicked. I needed a plan B. Quick! In a rush, I threw away all the evidence of the failed pancakes and ordered food online. After all, thanks to my workaholic parents, this was my forte. I instructed the delivery person to come to the back door, so Ben and Mrs. Megan would be none the wiser. Expectedly, at the very first bite, Ben and my mother-in-law praised me profusely for my food, and Ben even joked that I should join the next season of Master Chef. Yo, I will rate this restaurant 5 stars for sure. Mrs. Megan suddenly dropped her spoon. so I quickly bent down to pick it up, only she leaned down and whispered sarcastically, "I order from Sydney's too. Their sauces are divine." Oh, busted! Then, halfway through the night, this man showed up and apologized for being late. Turns out he was Jim, Faye's father, but Faye wasn't coming over as she was out with friends. Happy days! I watched Mrs. Megan and him touch a tissue box at the same time by mistake, and then blushed? Huh? Oh, I get it. She liked him. Now it made sense why she was always sucking up to Faye. "Have you thought about remarrying?" I asked Jim innocently. To the waiting eyes of me, as well as Mrs. Megan, he hesitantly answered, I don't think Faye would like that." Mrs. Megan glumly stared down at the floor. Okay, so I actually felt kinda sorry for her. Besides, matchmaking has always been my hobby, so I decided to help her. I knew that Faye was at a party on Saturday night, so I decided this was the perfect opportunity to play Cupid. I told Mrs. Megan that Jim had something to tell her, so meet him at the Golden Reef restaurant at 7 p.m. Then I told Jim the same. I stood behind a column and watched them share their starter, and then give each other gooey-eyed glances. Then Jim reached out and took Mrs. Megan's hand. They were looking at each other passionately when Faye suddenly rushed in from nowhere and angrily slammed her bag on the table.
"So this is it? My teacher? And my dad? For real?"
Faye, why are you here?" Jim stuttered.
"No one can ever replace Mom!"
Then she turned to a dumbfounded-looking Mrs. Megan.
"Turns out you were only being nice to me to get my dad. You're fake. Stay away from us."
Mrs. Megan covered her face with her hands, then quickly left. Geez, Faye was brutal. And however annoying Mrs. Megan was, she didn't deserve that.
"You!"
Faye shouted. Uh-oh, her gaze fixed on me.
"It figures you'd be behind this. Keep your big nose out of our family business and start caring about yours instead. Guess this is what lack of parental care does to a kid."
I stared at her speechless. Those words should have driven me mad, but for some reason, I only felt sad. And so guilty. I really just meant well. So, first thing at school the next day, I swallowed my pride and went to Mrs. Megan's classroom, where she looked lost in thought as she marked homework. I coughed to clear my throat, then said, "Miss, I'm sorry. I honestly was trying to help, but now I realize I should have minded my own business. I'm also sorry for being a jerk in your class." She was silent at first, then replied, "It's okay, as I've come to realize that you and I aren't so different. We both have complications in the way of finding love. Guess it's really not easy to get approval from your parents' family, huh?" She smiled and gently stroked my hair before continuing, "You're such a smart and kind girl, and I always knew you could do better in class, that I must have been too harsh on you. I'm sorry, too." I smiled back at her, and at that moment, I felt like all of our previous conflicts melted away. And I realized that I shouldn't neglect my studies. Instead, I should work hard to become the best version of myself. So, with a lot of hard work, I went from trailing at the bottom of the class to reaching the top spot, even overtaking Faye. Ha! Speaking of Faye, she was still ignoring both me and Mrs. Megan, and never put her hand up in class anymore. But then a rainbow flame experience in the chem lab changed things. Everyone ran out of there when the curtain caught on fire, except for a terrified Faye. Luckily, Mrs. Megan rushed inside to rescue her just in time, and covered her with a jacket as she led her to safety. After that, Faye realized that Mrs. Megan is a good person who cares about both her and Jim. So, through blurry eyes, Faye sobbed out, "Thank you so much, and sorry, I was too childish. Please forgive me." A few months later. So, yeah, you see, my wing woman plan worked. And now I have a second family, a really big one. But you know what's the best thing? That is, I no longer have to order food online anymore, 'cause I will stick to here, and my mother-in-law will cook for me.